Welcome to the Writer's Block, an ongoing web series where we talk about tips for writers, specifically at Fordham University, but really for writers anywhere. And today we're continuing a series where we talk about 5 things that we wish we knew during undergrad. And all of us have had very different experiences in our undergraduate career. Today we're going to hear a little bit about Peter's undergrad time at Goucher College in Maryland. So Peter, can you tell us a little bit about where you were when you entered undergrad, things like that?
Sure, yeah. I think this is going to be a cool episode. I think this is a great idea. I really enjoyed watching Alice's video, and I'm looking forward to yours as well, Kaho. So my own experience. I'm from Maryland, and in high school, I in high school, my first couple of years, I was a total mess, like many high schoolers. I was still a child. I was immature. I didn't get my stuff done. And then as junior and senior year approached, it sort of clicked. I started doing well. I started becoming interested. And so when everyone else was getting senioritis and sort of on their way out in high school, I was still on the upswing. So maybe that'll resonate with some viewers here. When I went to Goucher, I was very fortunate. My dad teaches at Towson University, which is a large, inexpensive public university 1 mile from where I grew up. And Goucher is a small, very expensive private university 1 mile from where I grew up. And I was very fortunate in that my dad, even though I could have gone to Towson for free because he teaches there, wanted me to go to a school that had very high standards and small classes, like Fordham. And so I say this because, like Fordham, Goucher was very expensive, but it was absolutely worth it because of the small classes and the individualized attention. So I feel like when I arrived at Goucher, it was a unique place. Like Fordham, it's small and private, or it can be small. Yeah, but I really enjoyed it, and I definitely do see some parallels with Fordham.
All right. I think that's great. So we're basing this around 5 tips that you wish, or 5 things you wish you knew during your undergraduate career. So let's jump into those. What would you say is the first thing that you wish you knew?
Sure. So I've jotted down 5 things, three of which are general, just sort of general things I wish I knew as an undergraduate. One has to do with writing in particular, and then one has to do with research. So the first thing that I suppose I'll say is that, and this is true when I graduated and I was looking back on my college days, and this remains true now that I've been out of college for almost a decade, is that I think that, like, doing well in college, right? Achieving those particular GPA benchmarks, getting the awards, right? Getting the grades that you want. I find like it's not supernatural, right? It doesn't have to be so abstract. For me, I think it literally boiled down to like 20 nights. Like over the course of 4 years, there were maybe 20 nights, right? Maybe 5 nights a year where I chose to stay up all night and read the book and write the paper rather than play video games or go out with my friends, right? And like it's literally only maybe 20 nights, right? I was generally a high achieving student. I generally got my stuff done, but I think if you think about it that way, it's not overwhelming. You'll be able to have a balanced life, academically and socially. But I think an important point of doing well in college is just identifying like what are those assignments that are really going to matter,
Hmm.
and then what are those nights, right, or those days or afternoons when you really need to buckle down. Because earnestly looking back in hindsight, like I can identify those key moments that yeah, where I really was able to be successful.
That's awesome. 20 nights seems
Yeah.
20 nights seems a lot fewer than I had, but I was kind of a night owl in college, so I tended to push things off to the night anyway.
Yep. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, you like it's obviously more than 20 nights. Like you need to work hard and get all your stuff done. But I think there'll be like 20 nights where it's like a decision point, right?
Hmm.
Where your friend will be throwing the coolest party, or maybe it's Halloween, right? And you want to go out and join your friends at some event. And they'll just be, maybe that's a better way to say it. There's 20 like decision point nights where you need to
Mm.
say, enjoy, have fun. I'll catch up with you tomorrow, but you need to buckle down. Yeah, it makes it literally, I found, made all the difference.
Awesome. How about point number
Um,
two?
yeah, point number two. So point number two, I think as an undergrad, I didn't realize that all of the cliches that older people tell you about how awesome college was and how they wish they'd taken advantage of all of the opportunities in college, that's all true. All of those truisms and cliches are true. And I found this to be especially true about the events that happen on college campuses, and then what your status as a young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed college student, what doors that status will open. And by that I mean, like at Goucher, I can remember professors were brought in from other universities, authors, musicians, filmmakers, right, to give talks, right? And I went to some of them, but I didn't go to as many as I should have. And looking back, I realized what an awesome opportunity that was, that
Hmm.
someone else, right, a large institution was paying for world-class artists, writers to
Hmm.
come advise us. And so I know Fordham has an even bigger endowment and an even bigger budget to bring really cool speakers and to put on really cool events. So like I implore you, like I would implore my younger self, like take advantage of those for sure.
Absolutely.
And then yeah. And then I think what I don't know if I took advantage of as an undergrad as well was like how infrequently people will say no to you if you introduce yourself as, hi, my name is so and so, I'm a Fordham student and I'm interested in X, right? Older people sort of live to advise younger people and to share their wisdom. And there's very few doors that your Fordham ID and your Fordham email address won't open if you're savvy about just introducing yourself or cold email.
Yeah.
So
Or
go
even
forth and cold
asking
email.
your professor to do an introductory email or something like that. You
Yeah.
hit a point there that I like to talk about with my students is that there's typically, this is a false dichotomy, but two kinds of students. You have students who are there for grades and they view their job as a college student to get grades. There are students who think that their job as a college student is just to learn. So they sit and listen and take in everything that they can. And then you have the kind of rarer third kind of college student who views their job as to question and engage. And that's much more of what you get to in graduate school, but like very good students generally want to be involved in the discussions that are going on. And in a college environment, this is a time when you're supposed to be questioning. So when you get these figures, go there and ask them, why did you do this? What do you think about this? And kind of engage in that sort of a way. Passive listening is great, but once you start questioning, you do start making your own arguments, start getting comfortable with where you stand on issues. And that does roll into your writing in some extent or research.
Yeah, Kyle, that's a great point, and I like what you said about it overlapping with your writing and your research. I'm not sure if I knew that as an undergrad, but I certainly see that now.
Yeah. All right, let's move it along to point three.
Point number three. This sort of piggybacks of point number two, but just and maybe this will speak to people who may be thinking about graduate school, be it in the humanities, a PhD, law school, medical school. Um, and it has to do with publishing, right? So as graduate students, Cahill and I are always scrambling to publish, right? We want to present our writing in other venues besides just our classes. And so that can be tricky sometimes because we're publishing in our fields or we're looking at journals that are based in New York. And as an undergrad, you have journals at Fordham that are only for Fordham students, right? You are their captive audience and the only pool of applicants that they're drawing from. And so it's just a truism. If you want to publish your creative writing, your essays, your poetry, your photography, as a Fordham student, you can if you apply enough times and if you are persistent about it, because there are particular journals that only accept Fordham students, right? Because they're based at Fordham. Uh, take advantage of this. I did not take advantage of it as at Goucher as much as I should have, and I regret that.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I would also say that that's maybe definitely much more for those students who are considering academia as their go-to or a career in writing in general. Um, but we have similar things to like academic journals for, say, if you want to do econ or if you want to do business stuff, we'll have like other presentation opportunities, um, things that are another way to sort of express those skills, build them up, and add them to a CV.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I know on my end that there's journals at Fordham. What are they called? The comma, Rhetoricos. What other journals?
Eloquentia Prefecta.
Yeah. And so those are the ones that I'm familiar with. But I'm positive that Gabelli must have some sort of student publication. There's of
Or if not a
course.
publication, then a conference or some sort of presentation system where you can start kind of honing your chops and getting comfortable in that.
Yeah, yeah, well put.
Yeah.
Um, Point number four. So point number four has to do with writing in particular. And this is something that I think I've only discovered in the past decade that I wish I knew as an undergrad, is that you can you can think out loud on the page, and you can set yourself up in your writing to say anything you want. And so what I mean by that is, if you want to be outrageous in an essay, right? If you want to say something over the top, it's hard to do that because you know your professor is going to be there with their red pen and circle it and say, this is over the top. But all you have to do is preface that by saying, if at the risk of being outrageous, let's consider X. Or if the reader will permit me to be outrageous for just a moment, and then you say it.
Hmm.
And there are very few professors for whom that won't resonate because you've framed the comment, you've anticipated their reaction. And I find that really works in so many different registers. If you do want to include a tangent, right? We've all had
Hmm.
professors, right? This is a tangent or this is not relevant. Um, Either put it in a footnote or set it up that way, right? If the reader will permit a brief tangent, comma, and then you say it, uh, yeah, this is just a
Hmm.
small sort of odd point, but I find it so enormously useful because it signals that you are self-aware about your own writing.
Hmm.
And as professors of writing, that's kind of like just what we're looking for, right? Are you being cognizant and are you aware of what you're saying?
Yeah, it's actually a great rhetorical technique because when you do something like that, something that's very bold or forward, it does snap the reader's attention to it as they have this dissonance for like, well, this doesn't quite follow, and you can rely on that so long as immediately after you place it within context.
Yep.
So it can be sort of one of those things that you use to jolt a reader to pay attention. This is the kind of thing that if you're writing long articles and you want a reader to stop skimming, you do something like that. It's sort of like a break in the logic that will stop a reader and get them to recontextualize everything regarding this point. It's something
Yep.
that you see a lot in sort of science writing when you would have a whole bunch of jargon, but then they break it down to an instance of something that happened that doesn't seem related to anything at all, but is a curious anecdote. And then after that, they'll explain, following it, how everything you learned before applies or
Yep.
how it might work as a case. So, yeah, I think that's a great tip.
Yeah. I hope so. Final point, number
That's all.
five. Regarding research, and again, this is something that I think I've only really realized in the past decade. I wish I knew when I was 20. Is that you can research your way into a topic, and it can be enjoyable, and you can sort of do some of the work without realizing it's work. And what I mean by that is I see over Kyle's shoulder his brilliant Beckett books, with the brilliant Beckett face there. And so I can remember having to write a paper on Beckett as an undergrad. And I found Beckett to be sort of overwhelming. I read a couple of his books and I'm not sure if I quite got them.
Hmm.
And so I had to write a research paper. And so I just picked up a biography of Beckett and then some sort of not very academic profiles of Beckett in like The Atlantic or Vanity Fair, and just sort of got cozy on the couch and read them. And then I picked up another biography, and then I watched a documentary about Beckett. And like none of this is, sitting in the library looking at JSTOR articles. It's all a little bit less like capital A academic. But when it came to write the paper, I actually found that it was really useful.
Hmm.
So I suppose what I'm saying is like your research can be enjoyable, right? Like where's
Yeah.
the documentary? Where's the painting? Where's the very readable biography of whoever you're researching? That can be work just as much as the hard academic books can be work.
Absolutely. I like to think of it as making your craft also your hobby. This is
Yeah.
something I do with folk music a lot. I listen to a lot of folk music and I listen to interviews with other musicians as to why they work on this. And we do this with writing as well. Um, so as you mentioned, Beckett was the first author that I actually published on. But the reason I got into Beckett was because I was watching versions of his plays that were being produced in Argentina and in Latin America, and were in a completely different context to what he actually himself was like had lived through. So these sort of alternate ways of entering into it, whether it's maybe a non-academic biography. Well, that's great. There are plenty of movies and things that get people into the hobby or into the craft. Um, One of the ones that students in my generation loved is Midnight in Paris, the film which has all of these great writers from the early 20th century. And you get to see actors putting on their roles and you get a sense of their persona that you wouldn't get if you just, read the page or read a dry biography. So yeah, absolutely engage in it in a way that like is fun for you.
Yeah. And I guess a final point regarding that is that I can remember as an undergrad, like, being in the library for 5 hours and reading a ton of dense articles about a topic, and then afterwards just wanting to decompress, to just sort of zone out. But rather than do something entirely unrelated, I would then throw on like a fun Netflix documentary about whatever the topic was, right? Or listen to a podcast, right? And so you can still come at a topic and be learning something, even if it's not the sometimes painful work of sitting there with a highlighter going through the JSTOR article.
Absolutely. I do this with my dissertation to like even this week. If I get writer's block or something, or I've done too much research, I'll go on YouTube and Google the name of an author and a documentary and just put that on in the background because you'll passively pick up on some stuff, but also you have no idea what take the documentarian is necessarily going to use. And it's another viewpoint that you will then take in and be able to use in your own writing.
Yeah, agreed. That's great.
Yeah, I think the tip there is really if you love learning, you'll find ways to incorporate even your like joyous times into learning.
Yeah, well put.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your tips, Peter.
Yeah, of course.
All right, we'll close this off now. Is there anything else you'd like to say to anyone?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week. I'll talk about my time at the University of Utah. Thank you very much, Peter, for sharing your time at Groucher. Is there a certain mascot for the Grouchers that we need to give a sign off for?
Yeah, the Goucher Gophers was our mascot, and we were famous because our football team has never lost a game.
Wow. How many games
And
have you played?
well, the catch is that we don't have a football team,
There
so
you go.
that was always, if you don't have a football team, you can never lose a game.
All right. Well, go Gophers.
Woo!
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.